Powerful confirmation that the presence of President Trump in Nigeria will quicken the coming of Biafra. This commentator clearly mentioned Biafra for the first time in such a powerful international news outlet in this interview, as a possible outcome of President Trump's presence in Nigeria. Because the North has embraced terrorists as their brothers, and if that's the case, then, the only solution is to let the Christian majority, also known as Biafra, be on their own so that the rest of the Christians in Nigeria will have a comfort zone and a defense mechanism against rampaging Islamic terrorists. That's exactly what this commentator means when he mentioned Biafra. They even have the effrontery to put our great leader Nnamdi Kanu in Sokoto prison, the den of Islamic terrorists. This alone will force them to release our great leader sooner than later. Watch and see. President Trump has not even started and the terrorist sympathizers are already crying. Watch the videos.
There be more now.
Absolutely. The mere fact that the president ordered these strikes in an area which has an organization called the Islamic State of West Africa Province. This is a new organization, or new to the public, versus on the east of Nigeria you have Boko Haram. Practically speaking, all of the north of Nigeria is infested with jihadists, but the persecution goes all the way down, probably to the coast. And the strike by the president are very important. It could be the beginning, it could be the end, depending on what the reaction will be. But if we consider a longer range actions, it would be very possible that we could see an American presence on the coast of Nigeria, where most of the Christian community is. It was called Biafra in the past. So all of this is ahead of us. We will see how the president will decide.
Yeah, well, not afraid.
Tonight, we start with a sentence that you're never going to hear on CNN or MSNBC or anywhere from the radical left or their media propaganda puppets. That phrase, Christian lives matter. Thank God we have a president who again believes this. This week, President Trump ordered targeted strikes in Nigeria to protect Christians being hunted, burned alive, and driven from their churches. Notice the silence from the left. It's pretty deafening. There are no candlelight vigils, no trending hashtags. There's no mobs marching in the street. In fact, I haven't seen a single MSNBC panel even condemning the slaughter of Christians by radical Islamists. Black thugs and illegal aliens matter to the radical left. They couldn't care less about Christian children being kidnapped, raped, and murdered. Instead, they just mock and downplay the threat.
I think our reason for bombing is kind of strange, that somehow there's Christian genocide. I don't think there's any proof of that.
I mean, lady, come on, no proof of Christian genocide? Tell that to the more than 300 Catholic school children who were abducted in Nigeria just last month, who just this week were been returned home safely. Now, it's estimated that up to 100,000 Christians have been slaughtered in Nigeria alone since 2009, and more than 19,000 churches have been burned throughout that country. Thank God President Trump cares. And let's be clear, this wasn't about empire, nor about oil, or even regime change. This was about a president saying, if you're murdering people because they worship Christ, America will no longer look the other way. He has made this very clear, warning Islamic terrorists that if the killing of Christians didn't stop, there would be severe consequences.
I'm Nigerian. That's what I'm asking. Do you envisage US boots on the ground?
Could be. I mean, a lot of things I envisage, a lot of things. They're killing record numbers of Christians. They're killing the Christians and killing them in very large numbers. I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Listen, friends, that's not controversial. That's moral clarity. And it's exactly why President Trump didn't just talk about religious liberty. The man institutionalized it. He restored the White House Faith Office, put it where it belongs, inside the West Wing, and he even empowered it under Paula White, who is quietly leading a revival in the United States alongside other great believers like Alveda King and Dr. Ben Carson. Under this administration, the Christian faith isn't something you whisper about in the hallway. It's something you bring straight into the Oval Office. Now let's pivot for a minute, because while Christians are certainly being murdered abroad, Jews are being harassed, threatened, and assaulted right here in the United States of America. We all know that anti-Semitism is no longer hiding in the shadows. It's actually marching through campuses. It's even proudly wearing hijabs in Congress. Anti-Semitism in the United States has jumped a staggering 1,900% in a decade. And anti-Semitism, that is not America first. It's in fact the new currency of the progressive left. If you find yourself on the same side on this issue with AOC and Ilhan Omar and the Jihad Squad, then you've probably just lost your way. President Trump isn't leading the way. President Trump is leading the way in the right direction. His administration has been the most pro-Christian, pro-Jewish, pro-religious liberty administration in modern history. And it's not even close. The president moved the embassy to Jerusalem. He's battling anti-Semitism on campuses, and he's defending Israel unapologetically. They're protecting Christians globally, and through all these actions, President Trump is saying something radical in today's America. Faith is not a threat. Faith is our foundation. So tonight, remember this. When Christians are attacked, President Trump will act. When Jews are targeted, President Trump will act. That's not just leadership, that's conviction. May God bless President Trump. Happy New Year to you, America.
You know, everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different.
I can tell you, this Christmas happened to be the first Christmas in many years that we were not woken up with a phone call at midnight to say that a church was attacked. And it is a testimony that we must share, and we hope and pray that this will continue. We are also here to pledge our commitment to continue to work with the president for the progress and development of our country.
I want to tell you that the agreement between the British and the Fulani has collapsed. And the only person that collapsed it is Trump. I want the world to understand this. The only person that collapsed that devilish arrangement whereby the Fulanis have been guaranteed in perpetuity, the advancement of their hegemonic interest right across the whole of West Africa, not just in the zoo. As long as Britain gets their free oil, as long as there is enough money to pay every successive director of the United States Department of State, as long as there is enough money to bribe all ambassadors coming to Abuja. Before that, it was Lagos. As long as they have enough money, they were prepared to do anything they like to kill as many people as possible, to run the government into the ground, to go like there is no tomorrow, to display their mediocrity at its very worst.
Meanwhile, a legal advisor to detained indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, leader, Nnamdi Kanu, Njoku Jude Njoku, ESQ, has criticized the judgment delivered by Justice James Omotosho, arguing that it demonstrates that evidence no longer matters in Nigerian courts. Nnamdi was convicted of treason-related charges and was sent to Sokoto prison. His recent bid to move him from Sokoto prison was unsuccessful. In a statement issued on Thursday, Njoku said the most troubling aspect of the judgment was not its outcome but what he described as the deliberate refusal of the court to evaluate material evidence already admitted during trial. The most dangerous aspect of the judgment is not merely that it reached a foreordained conclusion, but that it did so by deliberately suppressing evidence already admitted on record, he said. This converts adjudication into a procedural facade. According to him, once evidence is admitted, a judge is legally bound to evaluate it, irrespective of the conduct, protest or silence of the defendant. Judgment writing is not a negotiation with the accused, he said, it is a solemn judicial duty anchored exclusively on the evidentiary record, Njoku stated. A judge may reject defense evidence, he said, but he must first confront it, evaluate it, and explain why it is rejected. Silence is not neutrality. Silence is suppression. He argued that several key exhibits tendered during trial were ignored in the final judgment, despite their relevance to the allegations against Kanu. Njoku cited a video exhibit of former defense minister, Theophilus T.Y. Danjuma, which he said showed that public calls for communities to arm themselves in self-defense were not unique to Kanu and were never criminalized when made by influential figures. Had Justice Omotosho evaluated that exhibit, he would have been confronted with the reality that calls for self-defense were openly made by establishment figures, he said. Proper evaluation would have shown that Kanu's statements were framed as community self-defense against violent attacks, not incitement to lawlessness. He also referred to an admitted video statement by Imo State Governor Hope Uzodinma, which he said absolved Kanu and the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, of responsibility for the killing of former presidential aide Ahmed Gulak. Governor Uzodinma publicly stated that neither Kanu nor IPOB had a hand in that killing, Njoku said. That single evaluation would have punctured one of the most politicized allegations surrounding this case, he added. The defense counsel further referenced statements attributed to the Director General of the Department of State Services, Adeola Oluwatosin Ajayi, which he said were admitted in evidence and showed that community-based vigilante groups had been endorsed at the highest levels of Nigeria's security architecture. If those statements had been examined, the court would have been forced to acknowledge that the formation of armed vigilante groups for community defense was officially encouraged, he said. That acknowledgement would naturally support the position that Kanu acted to defend Igboland when the state failed to do so. Njoku also cited the Lagos State Judicial Panel of Inquiry report on the #NSARS protests, which he said was tendered in evidence but ignored in the judgment. According to him, the report attributed much of the violence during the period to the actions of security agencies rather than to Kanu or IPOB broadcasts. That report dismantles the lazy and dishonest attribution of nationwide violence to IPOB, he said. Ignoring it stripped the prosecution's case of moral and evidentiary legitimacy. He further argued that documents before the court showed that Kanu had written to Southeast governors urging them to establish a regional security outfit similar to Omoticon, and that their refusal led to the formation of the Eastern Security Network, ESN. Proper judicial evaluation would have made clear that ESN was conceptually and functionally similar to Omoticon, differing only in political acceptance, he said. Njoku also faulted the judgment for allegedly ignoring basic chronology, noting that Kanu had been in the custody of the Department of State Services since June 2021 without access to communication. A man held incommunicado, without phones, visitors or access to counsel, cannot be directing events outside detention walls, he said. Time itself disproves the allegation. He warned that ignoring timelines amounts to abandoning causation in criminal adjudication. When courts ignore chronology, conviction becomes a matter of narrative convenience rather than proof, he added. Njoku insisted that the arguments raised were not speculative but based on exhibits admitted by the court, stressing that their proper evaluation would have undermined the foundation of the conviction. These were admitted exhibits. Their collective evaluation would have collapsed the architecture of the conviction. That is precisely why they were ignored, he said. He described the alleged refusal to evaluate the evidence as deliberate and outcome-driven. It was not accidental or procedural. It was driven by an overriding determination to convict, regardless of the evidentiary record, Njoku said. The legal practitioner also criticized what he described as the silence of major international media organizations, accusing them of reproducing the conclusions of the judgment without interrogating its evidentiary gaps. None asked the most basic question any law student would ask: why did the court ignore defense evidence it had admitted, he said. By failing to interrogate that omission, sections of the media have become unwitting accomplices in laundering judicial misconduct. He warned that the implications of the case extend beyond the fate of one individual. This is no longer about one man. It is about whether courts can openly disregard admitted evidence and still be treated as legitimate, Njoku said. A judiciary that ignores evidence without explanation ceases to function as a court of law, and a media that refuses to question such silence abandons its public duty. Together, they place the rule of law itself in existential peril, he said. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Stay tuned for more updates, stay safe and have a blessed day.